All right, a lot to talk about here on the WiscSports podcast. So, it's been a while since I've done one of these. It's been a while since I have done something like this. Last time I did this, I think, was a little over a year and a half ago. Because last time I remember doing it was for when Bob Uecker passed away. I do remember doing it for then, but we got a lot to discuss today. And by a lot, I mean a lot. Hold on, I gotta do all these weird, crazy setting things I guess I didn't do or whatnot. It is insane. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. We're gonna start with talking about the Milwaukee Brewers. So, I know, we're not quite where we need to be yet. I know, this isn't what you want to hear, but it's what we're talking about. It's what we're talking about here. So the Brewers have been off to a red hot start so far. So the Brewers, obviously, right now, we're deep into the MLB. MLB. For 77 games of the season, the Brewers are playing red hot baseball right now. They lead the NL Central by, I think, let me look. I'm pretty sure they have a 5-game lead. Last I checked. Yes, it's a 5-game lead over the Cardinals, who are 42 and 34. The Brewers have been playing really good baseball. They started off slow. They started off a little slow, but they've managed to kick into gear. They did deal with a lot of injuries, so obviously Jackson Choyo was out, Andrew Vaughn was out, Christian Yelich missed some time, but lineup's back. Everyone's playing. Well, most people are playing pretty good. There's a few people who aren't. By most people I'm talking about, like our 6 through 9 in the, or like 7 through 9 in the batting order. But fives are high right now. You got a perennial ace, Jacob Mizorowski, has looked like the best pitcher in baseball this year. He's about a week and a half ago, he pitched that complete game, one hit shutout against the Phillies. He faced the minimum, got 27 outs, faced the minimum. He threw 95 pitches. He did what's called a Maddox. He threw 15 strikeouts. Had a phenomenal outing. And then against the Braves this past weekend, he wasn't the worst. He gave up 2 runs, missed things. He's been really good. Guys like Bryce Terang, Jackson Churio, Jake Bowers, William Contreras are all having like all-star level seasons for this Brewers team, and they just made a move. They called up their number 4 prospect, Cooper Pratt, who was drafted in 2024. They call him up to the majors, and he has just been on a tear since he came here. I think he's got 333 average or something so far. So he's getting on base. He's been playing. They DFA'd Luis Rengifo to call him up. Big contract extension, 8 years, $50 million in the offseason. In April, it can be up to it can be up to a 10-year contract if they wish. So he's playing well. So he's playing really well so far in his 6 games. He's slotted in playing. He's been playing shortstop almost every. Didn't start last night, but he, you know, they DFA'd Luis Rengifo to call up Pratt because Pratt was on the 40-man. Rengifo didn't do a lot with the Brewers, so that experience is over. Luis Rengifo has been released, like we talked. He just got released as of a half hour ago, he's officially released. He's no longer on the team. He's no longer on the team. Um, and yeah, you know the and not but a gem that the Brewers got is a guy named Kyle Harrison. We all know about Kyle Harris. Well, for those who don't, he was drafted in 2020 by the San Francisco Giants. He made it. Really wasn't all too efficient with them. He kind of struggled. He couldn't figure out. He couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. He couldn't. They just couldn't find. Then he was traded last year to the Red Sox in the Rafael Devers trade, and they just stored him in the minor leagues. They had a bunch of pitching depth. They stored him in the minor leagues. He really didn't do a whole lot. They stored him in the minor leagues. He made 3 starts towards the second half of the season. And in September when they and then in February they decided that they trade him, Shane Jowett, and David Hamilton to Milwaukee for Caleb Durbin, Andrew Monasterio, and Anthony Siegler, all infielders. I know that's the trade you wanted to hear about. I know that's the big Milwaukee trade everyone wanted to hear about in this. But yeah, so and then somehow Kyle Harrison has turned into one of the best elite. He has a 2.42 ERA. Has a career so far. He's on pace to tie his career high in strikeouts. The Brewers took him to the lab. They fixed him. They figured out his mound positioning, his hand grips. The Brewers focus on the little things and they turn those pitchers into stars, and that is what they did with Kyle Harrison. And it's paid off. He had a career high 12 strikeouts against the Giants like 2-3 weeks ago. And he has turned into a good number 2 in the rotation. Obviously, Jacob Mizrowski's number 1. It's the number 1 there. He's the ace for the Brewers. And that's something that needs to be discussed is how the Brewers keep doing this. Because they traded away 2023 offseason heading in 2024. They traded away Corbin Burns because he cost too much money and they didn't want to hold on to him. So they got rid of him. They got DL Hall and Joey Ortiz, 2 guys who are, even though Joey Ortiz shouldn't be an everyday player, and they still somehow won, 93 games. They won the division in 2020. The wild card, but they did. Then in the 2024 offseason, heading in 2025, they trade away Devin Williams. They get Nestor Cortez and Caleb Durbin, neither of whom are on the Brewers. They also lost star shortstop Willie Davis in free agency. Yeah, they proceed in 2025 to have a career, to have a franchise record, 97 wins. They get the number. They have the best record in all baseball. They went to the NLCS, won the division for the 3rd straight year. Again. And then this offseason, they traded away Freddie Peralta to the Mets. They got Brandon Sproat, Jet Williams. Sproat has been more miss than hit so far in his major league career. Jury's still out on him. He's pitching tonight, so he's been decent his last few starts, so maybe he's turning a new leaf. They obviously, again, like I said, they traded away Caleb Durbin. They got Kyle Harrison for it, though, so it's worked out. David Hamilton, who was also brought over in that trade. And the only issue the Brewers are running into right now is pitching depth injuries. They have, looking at the roster, they currently have 5 pitchers, well, total of 8 if you count the guys on 60-day IL, but they got Coleman Crow out, who Crow was called out to fill some starts this offseason during the season. DL Hall was used in like their was used in long relief. He can give you 2 or 3 innings. Logan Henderson was having a really solid year in the rotation when they called him up after Brandon Woodruff got hurt the first time. and he's on the IL. Jared Koenig, who has been a decent lefty in the bullpen for the Brewers the last few years, wound up, he's on the injured list. He should be back soon. Carlos Rodriguez, I forgot about him. Rob Zastryzny came back for a game after being put on the IL to start the year. Then he got hurt again. Then obviously you got Brian Fitzpatrick, Quinn Priester, Angel Zerpo. I'll know about Quinn Priester. Had a phenomenal year last year with the Brewers. He went 13-3. He had a 3-something ERA. The Brewers won 20 straight starts from Quinn Priester, which is absolutely insane to think about. That they won that many games with Quinn Priester on the mound last year. He got hurt. He was dealing with a wrist issue, and he had thoracic outlet syndrome, which is kind of like in your rib area, and it can affect how you throw. So he was out for a bit. Then they put him on a rehab assignment. He just wasn't looking like himself in rehab. I think he got like a total of 7 rehab games total. And he just couldn't find it, so he made the decision to get that surgery to sit out the rest of the year, so he should be back in 2027. So, a little bit of recap that we've been doing about Jackson Chourio, like I said, killing it. Bryce Terang is looking like one of the best is still, in my opinion, the best second baseman in baseball. He's playing really good. Jake Bauers has earned everyday playing time with the Brewers. William Contreras, I don't got to go into detail about him. One of the best catchers in baseball. Andrew Vaughn, too. We have one of the best platoons at first base this year. Vaughn and Bauers. Bauers can play in the outfield, though, every now and then. So you got that. In about a little less than a month and a half. Trade deadline's August 3rd. The pressing needs for the Brewers are you need to get a bat at like third or something, because it's no disrespect, but Joey Ortiz isn't an everyday player. And David Hamilton, while David Hamilton has been good, he's also not an everyday player. So the Brewers need to solidify that. They could also probably their bullpen started off really bad to start the year. Like, their bullpen was atrocious. Trevor McGill lost his closer job early on. He just couldn't find his footing. And Uribe struggled early. All these things, they just couldn't figure it out. Aaron Ashby leads the lead, or probably tied now for the lead in wins. Chad Patrick Trevor McGill has kind of earned his closing role back. He's been really good the last month or two. Uribe still been hit or miss. Uribe just likes to put men on and gives up homers and do silly dances and almost get himself ejected from games and fined and suspended and all that. And the rotation, like I said, has also been good. Brandon Woodruff came back last night, pitched six innings clean, gave up one hit, no runs, struck out 10 in his return from the injured list. Which was nice to see. In a roster that's changed so much, and a pitching staff that's changed so much, Brandon Woodruff has been the guy that has stayed. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. He got a really bad shoulder injury in 2023. He didn't pitch in 2024 and most of 2025. He came back in July of last year, pitched, put back on the injured list. Then was put on the injured list in September. Didn't pitch in the playoffs, and then came back. Was healthy for the first month of the year. But he just couldn't find his footing, and he was put on the injured list. So he did some rehab starts. He has been really good. He was really good last night, like I said. So he's been through so much in terms of injury and everything. And so many fans have been talking about how, you need to get rid of Brandon Woodruff. He just hasn't been good. But his thing is like he speaks Brewer, He's been the one consistent. He's technically the longest tenured Brewer. He's been with the team since 2017. And he's been through a lot, like I've said, but he's came back. They gave him the qualifying offer. He came back, returned to the Brewers, and has just been phenomenal. He just has to, he's a two-time All-Star, 2019, 2021. It'll be one of those things where I don't think he's going to be back next season with the Brewers. But it's been a... If he decides the time has come and the Brewers don't bring him back, he's one of those guys where he's one of those guys where he's going to the Brewers Hall of Fame one day. He's going to the Brewers Hall of Fame one day. There's no question about it. He's going to the Brewers Hall of Fame one day. He's one of the best pitchers. He's one of the best pitchers of this era for Milwaukee. And now I'm going to miss watching him pitch when the time comes, when he doesn't leave. But he is just, adapting. And it's nice to see. It'll be one of those things where, because Brandon Woodruff, like I said, is one of the best pitchers in Brewers history, but we'll miss him. But he's been really good. He can give you a good, if he's healthy. When healthy, he is one of the best pitchers. He's one of the best, not one of the best pitchers in baseball, but when healthy, he is still a very good pitcher. And I think you could get a good playoff start out of him if he's healthy for the playoffs. If not, well, then the Brewers can just go try to get a guy at the trade deadline. I mean, the Brewers have probably the deepest farm system in all of baseball. They can make moves if they want to. They're not going to get Tarek Skubal, despite what people think. If they make a move for a pitcher, it's going to be like if they make a move for a starting pitcher or whatnot, it's going to be like a guy who can be like a 4 or 5. A guy who can be like a 4 or a 5. Or if you need to, could move up to a 3. And it's going to be a 1-year rental. Like, honestly, if he wasn't making a lot, give me Gray, Casey Mize, someone like that. It's not going to be like, you're not going to get your Tarek Skubals or your Joe Ryans. That's just not happening. But the Brewers, like I said, they have the system to where they could make a move like that, where they could get a Joe Ryan or a Tarek Skubal if they really wanted to. They do. I mean, you look at their farm system. They got 5 top 100 prospects, but top prospect, because they got the top prospect in all of baseball in Jesus Mate. But you could argue, looking at their system, 1 through 16, those guys in like the 10 to 16 range, or 11 to 16, who barely didn't cut the top 10, could probably be top 10, if not top 5, in other systems. That's how deep the Brewers system is. Because they've altered their player development, and they've just figured out how to develop farmhands. Like I said, they got the number 1 prospect in all of baseball in Jesus Mate. He's only 18, and he has 50 RBIs in AA already. Like, it doesn't get better than that. The Brewers, like I said, have a farm system that could make them compete. They're not going to, because, they're a small market. They're not going to pay all these people. But with how things are going, they are obviously. I think it's getting to a point where, especially with the lockout looming, coming, I think they realize they are going to probably have to actually make a move or two to help the team. Because sometimes they like to stay pat and make those small moves, which is fine. Last year they got Jordan Montgomery, who didn't wind up pitching for them. They got Brandon Lockridge and Shelby Miller. They just got pitchers. They didn't get a lineup. But yeah, there's not much else to say about the Brewers. I mean, it's been a really fun year, and the Brewers have been. I've been proudly wearing this hat. This team is. Every year they find a way to be good. Every year they find a way to be good. I mean, they've made the playoffs if you get rid of 2020, they made the playoffs they made the playoffs 8 of the last 9 seasons. 2018, 19, 24, 25. 7 of the last 8 years, and in that span they've won 5 division titles. So I don't know what they've done, but the Brewers, like I said, have played like one of the best teams in baseball on a consistent basis. Last year they did it, and this year, and vibes are high. At least if you're a Brewer. Pivot. We are gonna pivot to the one thing, the reason why I came out of retirement to do this. Goodness, how do I want to start this? Well, just gonna keep it simple. The Bucks, who are facing a tough decision, decided that it was time to trade franchise icon Giannis Antetokounmpo. After 13 years, they decided to make the trade. They made this trade. They turned it in. They made the trade. So the second half of this stream here is going to be pretty much breaking down my thoughts, the overall trade, thought process, what I think the future holds for the Bucks and whatnot. I wanted to save this specifically for the end because, I feel like this is the important thing. So, yeah, the Bucks. So the Bucks they traded franchise icon Giannis Antetokounmpo Portis to the Miami Heat for Tyler Hero, Kel'el Ware, Jamie Jaquez Jr., Kasparis Yakunis, I don't know how to say his name. 3 first-round picks, including number 13 for tonight. 1 pick swap and a second rounder. The other first-round picks, aside from pick 13, are 2031 first. I didn't get detail about the second-round pick. And I think the pick swap is also for 2030 or 2031. It's one of those swaps. So there's no additional teams. It's a 1-to-1 move. The Bucks and the Heat will execute the deal on July 6th. They'll see if it will expand. Right now it isn't. So we'll see what happens. So this has been a trade that's been kind of in the works for a while. Shams went last night and said, or early this morning, he said that Giannis apparently wanted out last May, but he wanted to make it work. And the Bucks, tried their best. They waived and stretched Damian Lillard. They're paying his contract off now, pay for the team. They brought in Miles Turner, who is coming off of a pretty solid career in Indiana. Went to the finals with them. He was a key focal point in those Pacers teams the last 2 seasons that had helped them get to where they were. They refurbished to death. They brought a lot of guys back. On like 1 year contract with options. I mean, you gotta look at what they got. You gotta look at what they. They brought in last year. They got Kevin Porter Jr. They brought him back. Taurean Prince, Gary Trent. Pretty much they were running it back. With what they had in 2024. They brought a lot of same pieces. They traded Chris Middleton last February. They traded him to the Wizards, and they got Kyle Kuzma. So, they kind of went into the year kind of a weird situation because people think they should have traded him last year, 2 years ago, and I'll get into all that later when I go over trading. The Bucks started off hot, but they just didn't have a good season at all. I mean, they started off fairly hot. I mean, they started 4-1. Then it just went downhill from there. Only months of the season they had a winning record were October and February. Other than that, they had their worst season. They had their worst season since it was their worst season since what was I think their worst season since like 2016 or 2015 because they went 33-48 I think, and they missed the playoffs or something like that. And that was the only time, well, aside from Giannis' rookie year, that was the only other time they had missed the playoffs in the Giannis era. They ended 32-50. They were 11th in the conference. They missed the playoffs, like I said, for the first time since 2015, since the 2015-2016 season. Like I said, they cut Damian Lillard last offseason. They were trying to make these moves to keep Giannis happy, to try to get him guys who he can play with, try to compete for another championship. It didn't work out. And now the Bucks were dealt with a stalemate. There was talks they were going to trade him at the trade deadline. He dealt with a lot of injuries this season. He only played in like, I think it was like 34 games or something, if that. So it was he went to his 10th straight All-Star game though, so that made up for it. He didn't play, and there's a lot of reports that the Bucks were looking to trade him at the trade deadline. They were open to it, but it was going to be like they weren't like deeply considering it. Like it was like, okay, they'll maybe explore options, see what maybe they can get for him, and go from there. Now it fell through. Trading him at the trade deadline. So then, that became the talk of the offseason when the Bucks ended with that record that, the Bucks were going to explore trading him. And Jimmy Haslam, who bought ownership stock in 2023, right around the time the Damian Lillard stuff and Doc Rivers was hired and Adrian Griffin was fired and all that stuff, came in and said they were hoping to have a resolution by the trade deadline. And other Bucks owner Wes Eden said that if Giannis didn't sign, then they were going to trade him. Well, obviously he did. He told the team he wasn't going to sign a supermax extension, so the Bucks put him on the open market for the first time. They actually considered it. It took them a while, like I said. I don't think they wanted to admit that the trade could have been possible, but and here we are. They made the trade, and it is what it is. So there's a lot to unravel with this trade, and I'll go over both sides because even though this is a Wisconsin sports podcast, I don't want to be too impartial about this whole situation. So the Bucks wound up getting Tyler Hero, who we all know he's a Milwaukee boy. He went to Greenfield, Wisconsin, which is a suburb outside of Milwaukee. He was drafted 13th overall to the Heat in 2013. There was a whole debacle about he wanted to commit to Madison. He decommitted to Wisconsin and went to Kentucky. There's a whole thing mishandled there, and he made the All-Star game in 2025. He's been a really solid player all around. He's only 26 years old, but I don't think he's actually going to play a game for Milwaukee. I think the Bucks are going to flip him. There's reports that the Detroit Pistons and the Bucks are in discussions to get for Tyler Hero. So we'll see what happens with that. If that, he'll be a really short-lived Buck. He'll be a really short-lived. Who didn't play there? He had a career year. 48% field goal percentage. He got 20.5 points per game. So like I said, he made an All-Star game. He would if they were to keep him, he'd probably slide in on that shooting guard spot because Ryan Rollins kind of has, that Ryan Rollins' team. They also got Kelly Ware, who he's a 7 foot center. He's 22 years old. He was drafted with the 15th pick in 2024 by Miami. He was on the All Rookie second team last year. He had 11.1 points off the bench in 22 minutes per game. So right now, tentatively, he would probably be the starting center with the Bucks, assuming which is going to be true, that Miles Turner is going bye bye and is going to be traded, which thankfully will happen because he needs to be traded. But he's been an intriguing prospect. He's one of those guys who has a high ceiling, and with new coach Taylor Jenkins being a developmental mind, I think he could get something out of Ware. They also got Jamie Jaquez Jr., who he was drafted with the first round in 2023 with the 18th pick. He's 25. He can do small forward or shooting guard. He was our rookie first team 2024. He had a really good rookie year. I remember that was the last year that I actually thoroughly watched basketball regularly, was 2023 and 2024. And I remember I saw Jaquez on the field a lot more than I thought I would. And Jaime Jaquez. Okay. Jaquez. Okay, that's how you say his name. Okay, I'm glad here on the site I use, I'm glad they had like a pronunciation thing so I can actually pronounce his name right. Rebounds. He was second voting for NBA Sixth Man of the Year. So this past year, so he's been a pretty good, solid role-playing guy off the bench. I think under Jenkins, he can get some minutes and be a key contributor. Maybe start. I don't necessarily know if he'll be like the guy to start, but I think he can be a guy where you get him to start. He averaged 15.4 points a game. I mean, I could see him honestly take that Bobby Portis role where he's just, that sixth man who you need him where he's just that sixth man. The last player the Bucks got in this trade is a rookie. Well, in Kasparas Giannis. He was born in Lithuania. He can do point guard or shooting guard. 6'5". He was drafted with a 20th pick last year by Miami. He went to school in Illinois. He only spent a year. He did play pro ball before that for Barcelona and this other team in Lithuania, Perlas Vanilius. I'm not going to bother. If I butchered that, I apologize. I apologize to anyone who's from Lithuania. If I butchered that, I'm sorry. And, he got a nice 4-year contract to start off. He did play with the Sioux Falls Skyforce a bit to start the year. He didn't get a lot of playing time in the NBA. But he did get some moment. He did get the start. He was starting that game where Bam Adebayo scored 83 points. He contributed to the achievement. He did get some assists to Bam Adebayo. So I think he's just gonna be like your, guy who you can throw in wherever you need him to. He wants to adapt. He wants to, do those things. And obviously, the Bucks trading Bobby Portis, the guy who has been a perennial sixth man for years. He's got a lot of flack from the Bucks fan base, but I think Bobby Portis, for what he did do here. I mean, defensively he was always pretty good. He only started 9 games. He only started 9 games last year. Felt like, but and obviously we don't need to talk about Giannis. So Giannis leaves the Bucks with a resume. NBA champion, NBA Finals MVP, two-time NBA MVP. He had a Defensive Player of the Year the same year he won his second MVP. He's the third player in NBA history to do that. Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon were the other two. 10-time NBA All-Star. 2021 All-Star Game MVP. 7 All-NBA First Team 2019-2025. 2-time All-NBA Second Team 2017-2018. 4-time NBA All-Defensive First Team 2019-2022. He was the NBA Most Improved Player in 2017. He was an NBA Cup champion, NBA Cup MVP. And he was the youngest player on the NBA 75th anniversary team in 2022. It's no secret what Giannis did for this franchise. He came in, was on the borderlands of mediocrity. You know, they're starting to get talks about the Bucks maybe moving because the arena situation wasn't great. And they didn't have consistency with that team. They just weren't very good. And, they took a chance on this kid from Greece, this scrawny 18-year-old kid from Greece with the 15th pick in 2013, and the rest is history. The Bucks gave his family visas to come live in the States, and, he adapted, and well, now he's became the greatest Buck of all time. It's not, and that's not even sugarcoating it. I think that can sound biased, but I think it's true. People can say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Kareem didn't have the longevity. He won a ring, yes, but Kareem didn't have the longevity. I think Kareem was only there for like 7 years. I think he was only with the Bucks for like 7 years. Mind you, he's still one of the greatest of time, and rightfully did have his number retired by the Bucks because he was so good. But at the same time, like what Giannis did, Giannis made, like I said, this quiet basketball city and turned it into a packed house every single night. Brought the city their first championship in 50 years. He became Milwaukee. The amount of Giannis jerseys I saw, the amount of Greek flags I saw, a lot of people were buying Greece flags and were bringing them to Bucks games. Like what he did culturally and what he did with Bucks. And I'll say this: growing up, I wasn't that into basketball. I started to get into it about 2016, which you can call me a bandwagon because that's when Giannis was on the rise. But I had supported the Bucks, but like I didn't like religiously watch them. I couldn't name the roster really. The only two guys I knew that had played for the Bucks in that time were Brandon Jennings and Michael Redd. That was about it. But then when Giannis came and Giannis started playing with a different fire that we hadn't seen in a while, he came in and rejuvenated this franchise. Turned the Bucks into a perennial contender every single season. No matter if they came up short. 2018, 2019, they went to the Eastern. Since 2001 with Ray Allen. They didn't win, but it happened. Then 2020, we don't talk about that. 2020, he signed that big extension with the Bucks, the biggest contract at the time in NBA history. The same year, the Bucks won the finals, and my favorite moment as a Wisconsin sports fan. Because I saw the Packers win the Super Bowl in 2011. I was 7 years old. I vividly remember it, but I didn't feel as emotionally attached as I did when the Bucks won the NBA championship in 2021. Like, because the Packers, we all know, the Packers epitomize winning. But the Bucks were this team where they're looked at as like, not one of the more historic franchises in the NBA. In fact, they were a relocation candidate before a proposal came to build Pfizer for them. And Giannis came. He played the NBA Finals on a bum knee. He didn't let that get in the way, and he won the finals. Him, Middleton, Jrue Holiday. Those were fun. So that's pretty much that rundown. What I think is next for the Bucks is just more teardown. So they still got Kyle Kuzma, who I don't think you're gonna get a lot for Kyle. I think they could hold Kuzma until the trade deadline because I think Kuzma's got a year or two left on his deal. I think you can hold him till the trade deadline, and then get more pieces. Hopefully, he balls out and get more pieces. The Raptors reportedly have interest in Miles Turner. Sounds like that deal is going to get done. I'm guessing the thing is the Raptors want the Bucks to take on the atrocious contract of Jakob Poeltl. So I think that'll be the caveat. And here's the thing: the Bucks are rebuilding. They can take on that contract. They can take on the contract. It's so where does that leave the Bucks roster? If you like, let's say you gut out. Let's say you gut. I mean, you've already gutted Giannis and Bobby Portis. Let's say you gut Miles Turner and let's just say for the heck of it, let's just gut out Kyle Kuzma. You'd be left with AJ Green, Ryan Rollins. Those two guys have guaranteed contracts. You have Pete Nance accepted his player option, although I think he's going to be traded because he's 31. Although I could see the Bucks keep him as like that one random veteran guy that everyone forgets is on the team. Andre Jackson Jr. is still there, but I think he could probably be traded. Jericho Sims has a player option. Gary Trent has a player option. Kevin Porter Jr. has a player option. A lot of guys have player options, and I think maybe Gary Trent accepts his player option, but I don't think anybody else does. I don't think anybody else accepts the player option. I think Kevin Porter Jr. probably leaves and tries to get something more on the market, which he probably could, because I just don't know because this rebuilding team, I mean, he's only 26, so he's young enough, and you could, I suppose, if you do keep Kevin Porter Jr. and you trade Tyler Hero, you could throw Porter, I guess. You could throw KPJ at the shooting guard spot. It'd just look really weird. And you got to factor in the new guys they just got roster-wise with Jaquez, Ware, Kasparis. You got to factor in those guys. Plus, whatever else you get from Tyler Hero and the draft. And you got Cormac Ryan, who's still on a two-way contract. I know they brought him in. They gave him a nice little two-way contract. But he had 28 points. So I think, especially in this rebuilding era, because he's only... Oh, never mind. I didn't realize he was 27 years old. He might honestly, be like that guy who gets a long-term not a long-term contract, but gets his converted. I think technically we on a two-way deal. I always forget how two-way contracts work. I don't know if they expire every year or whatnot, so I don't know. I think one guy the Bucks should bring back is Ousmane Yang. He was pretty solid in the 2 months he played there. He is heading in. I think the Bucks should bring him back. I mean, he's only 23 years old. I mean, keep him around. You can put him and Jaquez in that like sixth man role, and either of them could thrive. So it's a new era in Milwaukee. There's a lot of rebuilding. The draft tonight, they host a 10 in the 13th pick. Although the 13th pick, the guy who they tell the Heat to select will be wearing a Heat hat and probably being posted by them and all that, but will be converted to the Bucks. I do like this hypothetical trade I just saw literally like 30 seconds ago. Hypothetical Miles Turner trade. Toronto receives Miles Turner, and the Bucks get Jakob Poeltl and pick 19. I don't hate that trade at all, because it would give the Bucks 3 first-round picks to play with. We should get 3 new roster spots. Would be in this rebuild. Oh yeah, I forgot. Technically, I think the Bucks still in a. I still think the Bucks employ Thanasis too. Never mind. He's on. No, never mind. He was on a 1-year contract. They didn't pay. He's on a 1-year contract. So Thanasis is gone. We all know where Thanasis is going. The Heat. Now talking about the Heat trade, this is kind of the Heat side of things. They've been trying to get a star like this for years. They've tried. They had Jimmy Butler for a while, but then he wanted out. They got Bam Adebayo, Jrue Holiday, Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Karl Anthony Towns, Paul George. I don't think Paul George is ever going there. Kawhi Leonard. So many guys. And they finally got their franchise guy that they can build around. Or try to build around. I don't know. The Bucks did kill all their depth pretty much. And now the Heat are looking to scramble to sign some guys to fill those vacancies. There were talks that the Celtics were also interested in Giannis. There's a lot of teams interested in Giannis. The Celtics had interest in Giannis, but Jimmy Haslam was driving force because he didn't want to risk Jaylen Brown, who was the guy that would have been coming back from Boston, to have him. And he's also the owner of the Browns, so I have to deal with the Giannis and the Myles Garrett situation when Myles Garrett was traded. So he wanted certainty, and I think the Miami deal worked out better overall because if you wanted to, because my logic is if you wanted to trade because if you just wanted to, trade or whatnot, if you wanted to get Jaylen Brown and still try to compete, at that rate you should have just kept Giannis. That's my thought process on that whole thing. So now, it all asks, we all ask, where did it all go wrong for the Bucks? There's been different times about where people have been saying about who's to blame and when it started. There's been people saying when they got Damian Lillard, when they fired Adrian Griffin. I'm gonna say this. I think the downfall of the Bucks started when they fired Mike Budenholzer after the 2023 season when they lost to Miami. Because they brought Adrian Griffin in, who he didn't really get a fair shot. He was 30-13. He did lose the locker room though, so that's why they did fire him. And Doc Rivers just couldn't get it going with the Bucks. Then they trade Jrue Holiday and picks to Portland for Damian Lillard. So Portland owned their future. And then they had Dame for 2 years, and that didn't work. Then they cut Dame. Then they got Kyle Kuzma. They traded away Chris Middleton, who's another franchise icon. And got Kyle Kuzma. Then they cut Dame because Dame tore his Achilles, so then they cut him because they didn't want to pay him. Then got Miles Turner. So it's been a lot of malpractice. Jimmy Haslam ruins everything he touches. So there's just been a lot. So I'm going to miss Giannis. I think, I'm going to miss Giannis. He, like I said, brought life to this franchise. So not much else to say. Giannis, thank you for I know you're not watching this, Giannis, but thank you for everything you did for Milwaukee. You're going to have your jersey retired. No doubt you're going to be in the Xbox Hall of Fame, the the Basketball Hall of Fame. Hopefully you get a statue outside of Pfizer Forum and you can come back either late in your career or do this. I'm gonna miss you, man, but thank you for everything you did. That's gonna close out this stream. Thank you for watching. It was nice to do this again. I'll see you guys if I decide